Greetings all! In this episode we are going to have a spot of fun with a pair of old promotional War Machine models, a Mercenary Warcaster and Cygnar Charger Light Warjack. These two models were packaged together as a learn-to-play experience for retailers for, I believe, the launch of War Machine Mark II. I found these in one of my distributor's back catalog a few years ago when I owned an LGS. Unfortunately, I seem to have misplaced the data cards they were shipped with, which would have provided us with further details, and I've not been able to find any other information regarding the Warcaster. If I find them, I'll pin a comment to this video with more information. If any of you are familiar with this particular release, please let me know in the comments below. Today we'll be painting rich purples and face-melting oranges. We'll start with textured hard surfaces of the Warjack, followed by the soft textile of the Warcaster's cloak. We'll be using exclusively Army Painter paints, plus a bit of black ink, in this video to ensure accessibility should you wish to replicate what you see here. The full list of paints used are on screen now. Our standalone fantasy story for today takes us to a distant corner of the material realm, in a Dungeons & Dragons adjacent setting. I hope you enjoy the video and accompanying tale.
I require a carriage.
A carriage, my lord?
A carriage.
The request came after a remarkably long period of silence from his companion. So long, in fact, that Madrigas had nearly forgotten the other's presence and given himself over to idle contemplations. Even the heavy, shuddering iron tread had beat back to a soft, lulling rhythm. The request, rather demand, came sudden and abrupt, confusing Madrigas back to the moment.
If I may ask, my lord, why a carriage?
Are you dull?
Less a question than a statement.
I admit there were times I could have been sharper, my lord.
A low-pitched wheeze of steam escaped his companion.
It is unbefitting for royalty to travel by foot.
Ah, he was back to picking at that.
I heartily agree, my lord,
Madrigas said with a shallow bounce of his grey head.
Were it in my power to provide you with one, I would hasten to do so.
Another hiss of a pressure relief valve.
Might I make a small observation that may assuage your discomfiture, my lord?
You may.
In the strictest sense, you're not traveling by foot, my lord, as, technically speaking, you do not have any feet. Your current mode of travel should thus have little bearing on your disposition.
Madrigas followed his lord's pace to a stop. With a slow, deliberate grinding of ensorcelled metal and hydropneumatic pistons, the massive construct pivoted to face the artificer. The emerald eyes of its awesome face glared down at him with terrible condescension. The metal behemoth stood twice the height of Madrigas. Of general humanoid shape, with broad shoulders and stocky legs, it was as wide as a twin-team ox cart, and weighed the equivalent of a quartet of heavy cannon. The monstrous goblin was a beautiful example of exquisite destruction. Thick plates that formed its armor were forged with void ash, lending it a stunning purple hue in addition to near indestructibility. The burst strength of its star metal cylinders and fireworm hide feed lines far exceeded any internal pressures they would ever be subjected to, while granting the armor a giant strength. In its right hand it held Siege Breaker, a massive arcane hammer designed to batter down thrice-banded fortress gates. Its entire left arm was given over to a double steam culverin. At the heart of these paired small-bore cannons sat a genuine shard of elemental earth. This steam viper, as Madrigas called it, could not only unleash a torrent of superheated vapor hot enough to boil a dozen knights in their own armor in a single breath, but it could launch a rapid-fire stream of high-velocity granite cannonballs to incredible distances. Its construction had cost a royal ransom, literally.
You try my patience with your jests, old man.
The gravelly tones had taken on a hint of violence. Madrigas raised his calloused hands in supplication.
My lord Norman, you are a being of elemental steam, a gaseous entity, fundamentally formless, without limb and so without feet. Though the mighty suit you possess has great armored boots, they are no more yours than would be the wheels of a cart, should you possess one of those.
Noman, continuing his fierce glare, said nothing.
I can replace your legs with wheels if you'd prefer to roll about.
Noman jerked away from Madrigas and stomped hastily down the road.
It would be a simple enough task,
Madrigas added with haste, jogging to keep pace.
There's sure to be a wheelwright in the next town.
Shut up, fool.
I don't even need a well-appointed workshop,
The old artificer continued buoyantly.
I've tools enough with me to rough them on.
I said quiet.
We have sufficient coin to rent a stable. I could do it next to the swine and sheep.
No, damn you, stop your prattling.
Are you saying you are content to walk, my lord? That you are satisfied with the exceptional quality of my craftsmanship in creating that pair of magnificent legs, not to mention the rest of your awe-inspiring form?
Yes, damn it, now shut up.
The very perfect form,
Madrigas pressed.
that encapsulates your entire royal being, preventing it from near instantaneous discorporation should it ever be fully exposed to the material world.
Lord Noman, princeling of the elemental plane of steam, came to a furious, fuming halt and whirled violently towards the artificer.
You tiresome human, what would you have me say to stopper your mouth? Would you have me praise yet again the marvel you have wrought? Raise your genius above all others? Would you have me beg your brilliance from bended knee? Abase myself before the infinite majesty of your matchless art? Tell me, O King of Kings of Artifice, grant me the wisdom to understand how to end your insufferable speech.
Madrigas, royal artificer to Lord Noman, looked up into the great metal head of his employer and said, flatly and in modest tones,
I would have you act with the wisdom our present situation requires, and not the indignant selfishness that led us to it.
Being by nature a conciliatory person, Madrigas would prefer to let Noman's past transgression lie, but the young prince seemed ever intent on making that difficult. The marriage of age and ignorance born from royal indolence were a potent combination, test enough for the patience of even the worldly artificer.
It was not selfishness that brought us here, old man,
The ironclad elemental hissed.
but the cowardice of another.
You threatened your younger cousin with condensation and death should he fail you. Given that he saw little chance of success, his decision to denounce you would seem to be born of intelligence rather than a failing heart. Or whatever equivalent organ your kind has.
Prince Noman scoffed, a remarkable feat considering the containment suit he wore bore only limited head and facial articulations. It was a sign, Madrigas noted with approval, that the young prince was adapting well. When they were first banished to this realm, the elemental could barely waddle like a toddler. The artificer made note to improve the armor's facial dexterity when the opportunity to do so presented itself.
Little chance of success. The cunning of my plan was beyond reproach. Had that sulking wisp done as he was commanded, I'd be adrift atop the fumarole of ages, guiding the future of an entire plane. Instead, that wizened bloat of gas continues in her blind, senile quest of moderation and mediocrity.
That wizened bloat of gas,
Madrigas noted.
is your great aunt.
And
And if you refuse to bear respect for your elders in the midst of disagreement with them, how could you expect your youngers to do the same with you?
Noman held the artificer's gaze as if unsure how to answer, or even if he should. When he turned away and resumed his trudge down the narrow country road, it was with a quieter mien. Madrigas followed, slowly gaining until he was once more walking alongside his prince. In the silence that followed, his mind turned to the beauty of the realm about him. The natural splendor of the landscape, idyllic as it was, interested him less than was proper for one so widely traveled. Madrigas had seen many worlds in his long years, mostly by foot or hoof, some by mechanical contrivances, more than once in the possession of something very large and hungry. The terrain, for its part, shone only as the backdrop for the great challenger that fascinated and consumed his mind. War. Not the fighting and conflict itself, but the problems born from them. The disparity of arrayed forces, the physical resources available, the needs and demands of a given disposition in a specific geographic area, bound by features natural or otherwise, whose only import lay in their strategic qualities. The pain and suffering of those who fought and died, and those whose simple misfortune found them in the midst of peril, the artificer had long since set aside. War was universal, a sordid thing that all but the darkest of hearts would prefer didn't happen, but nevertheless seemed intrinsic to existence itself. It was a beautiful problem, the puzzle of destruction. Profitable, too. Madrigas had gathered and lost considerable fortunes over the decades of his activity, and while the losses were distressing, whether gambled on a risky venture or pilfered by fate, the artificer found it difficult to imagine what he should do if he only knew success. Failure was ever the great motivator. Success led to stagnation, failure to new worlds.
Why are you here, Madrigast?
The sunlight filtering through the oblong leaves of flanking trees was a pleasant change from the perpetual diffuse lighting of the plane of steam. The artificer disapproved of worlds and planes that lacked defined day-night cycles. Regular periodicity was a requisite for a sound mind. The first construct Madrigas built when he entered Prince Noman's employ, then still a well-regarded member of the Royal House of Vapor, was a style of water clock paired to a system of dimming apparati in his workshop. It was, he insisted to his employer, a requirement for his upkeep. Humans could not survive in the absence of a light-dark cycle, he argued.
I promised the court I would accompany you and ensure the pronouncement was carried out.
It was some time after the clock's construction that Madrigas deduced that it wasn't for his comfort that Noman agreed to the costly production. Clean, truly pure water, essential to an accurate clock, could only be obtained from one source on the plane of steam.
Do not placate me, Madrigast. Exile is fatal to us. You have commuted my execution to eternal imprisonment. You know what I am asking.
In requesting a source of pristine water, Madrigas had not only unknowingly secured for himself an enamored and beholden employer, but also made his own safety precarious in court.
I am bound to the contract I signed with you, my lord,
Madrigas said simply.
The change in your standing with your family did not dissolve my responsibilities. Your sentence was not explicitly death, and so the terms of the contract held. Still hold.
After all, how was Madrigas to know that pure water can only be had on the plane by condensing an elemental and distilling their very life essence? Noman gave a grunt, though there was little displeasure in it.
I am sure one of your experience and wiles could reason a way out of the contract, should it in fact be the rigidity of your honor that binds you to it.
There was no malice or venom in the pronouncement.
You think too highly of me, my lord, though you may very well be correct.
And yet,
Noman pressed when it was clear his companion would say no more.
You are here.
Madrigas nodded.
Have you considered I may simply enjoy your company, Lord Norman?
That is doubtful, Artificer. But I shall humor your evasion and treat it as you would have me do so. A poignant lesson in deduction, observation or other, frustration and self-discovery.
Madrigas smothered a smile as best he could.
You would not continue in my service if you saw no value in it. The service itself, however, is of minor consequence. I have no standing in this plane, and there is little chance of returning home where it could theoretically be of use to you. It must therefore be my person you value. Or, more likely, this honor.
Noman took a cautious, sidelong glance. The artificer did not react, only continuing on his quiet way.
Perhaps not. What use is this body of war in a realm of peace?
Peace. Bah! What an irksome, mewling creature. Peace was a patron of art in form, not function. Peace was a dilettante in gilded armor too imperious to spatter with blood. Peace was fat and languid, idolatrous and fickle, denuded of sense, indulgent of petty whims. Peace was a spendthrift pregnant with ideas yet wasted of purpose. What use was peace but as a prelude to war? And yet peace was all they found here, 100 years without so much as a border skirmish. What nonsense. What waste.
An interesting question, my lord. What use indeed?
Madrigas made a show of falling into deep thought.
What? No, that's not...
a sudden wheeze of steam.
It is the armor you have plans on. And given your reluctance to reveal them, I am in no doubt it involves my further degradation.
No more than can be helped, I assure you, my lord,
Madrigas said brightly.
And hardly any less to entertain you.
It's only carts and wheels, my lord. Carts and wheels.
Boil, you testing fool. Be quick and tell me of my fate, for I doubt you have left room enough for me to escape it.
Yet even peace could be bent to the will of war for those with sufficient perspicuity.
Oh, my lord, but you see straight through me,
the artificer said with feigned surprise.
It is true, yes, that I have been considering alternative modes of employment for us, that we might better weather our present misfortunes. Only, no, I should think my lord would not approve.
Those with a little salesmanship. With a soft creak of gears and pistons, Noman lifted Siegebreaker, hovering it over Madrigas.
It is a long walk to Dudesh, old man. I'm undecided whether I would enjoy it better if it were made alone.
Those willing to rebrand.
Madrigas and NoMad Destruction Company.
It was several moments before the massive warhammer returned to the prince's side.
That is a terrible name.
If my lord has suggestions,
he said with a shrug,
I am happy to hear them.
Most artificers died young. Those who lived long lives tended to do so under the permanent employ of wealthy royalty. Those in Madrigas' profession tended to lack the social acumen to know their place in the scheme of things. Too focused on the purity of their work, they brokered no compromises when their employers invariably misused their productions or found fault in them, legitimate or otherwise. Artificers rarely thought of the broader context they existed in. They built for others, rarely for themselves. Even the wealthiest master of artifice would willingly empty their own coffers in pursuit of grander creations, if not kept in check and budgeted to allowances. The key, Madrigas had learned, was to undersell a job and overperform, then skip out after the second or third project when the flow of gold seemed untenably high.
Hear but not consider, I suspect. If I am not mistaken, you have already acquired employment for us under the name.
Madrigas looked up, this time with legitimate surprise.
In Karoom,
Noman explained,
you are most dispirited at having learned of this world's harmonious history.
My lord,
the artificer began with a smile.
No,
Noman quickly added, cutting him off.
It was not concern for your well-being so much as my own. A happy fool, however aggravating, is a better traveling companion than a dour, sulking one.
A royal stipend could keep an artificer well enough resourced, but ultimately enfeebled the mind. You could not push the bounds of creation on a monthly stipend. Only war opened the coffers wide, and then only for a short time.
I see. Of course, my lord. Continue.
Madrigas, however, had tested the bounds thoroughly, and was becoming ever more aware of the passage of time. What once he found repulsive, growing wizened and decrepit in a royal cage, now seemed, if not outright attractive, at least a tolerable way to live out his remaining years.
Dispirited, as I said, in the immediacy of your discovery. Yet a single visit to the mercantile quarter seemed to lift them immensely.
Madrigas stumbled.
Careful, old man.
Noman clucked in a voice of bubbling vapor.
You're not nearly as light of foot as you may once have been.
The artificer, straining to keep his features masked, wondered how Prince Noman could possibly have known about his secretive trip when the elemental had himself been installed in Karoom's guard barracks for safe keeping. He considered if there weren't natural air spirits in this world, invisible to his own eye but kin enough to Noman to be swayed by his regal bearing. He made a note to investigate texts on regional folklore in Dudesh's archives, as well as to better keep a hold on his own secrets.
Very true, my lord,
Madrigas muttered.
Very true. I'll be sure to keep that in mind.
Then, leaving the suggestion of the prince's otherworldly powers unnoticed,
if you suspected a potential positive change in our fortunes, why not remark upon them?
Prince Noman's broad shoulders heaved up.
A happy fool.
They walked again in silence. Madrigas noted birdsong for the first time. He wondered when it had started.
Should I bother to inquire what the employ is?
The prince asked in a level voice.
I recommend you hold the same course you set out on, my lord, returned the artificer.
And which course was that, Madrigast?
Ignorance.
It took a moment for Madrigast to make sense of the sudden burst of burbling, chortling steam that escaped the hulking armor. The artificer had not designed the suit for laughter.
Carts and wheels, Madrigast.
Very good, my lord.
Madrigast nodded with a smile.
Carts and wheels indeed.
There was little point in straining the prince's pride further with the specific details of their commission, profitable though it would be. After all, Madrigast doubted his lord would willingly agree to steam cleaning the capital's extensive sewer systems, unless put on the spot before the Magister of Dudesh himself. That was NoMad Construction Co. I hope you enjoyed the tale. One of the greatest benefits of having a large number of random models in your pile of potential is the opportunity it affords you for experimentation. It can be uncomfortable to paint models in new palettes or schemes if they're part of a large unit or, heaven forbid, an entire army. There can be a mental block when it comes to spending a lot of time painting something that could be used in a game, but probably won't be because the colors are too garish or there aren't enough of them to actually put on the table. Of course, there are always ways to justify it, but aesthetically and narratively it can be hard to reconcile. If, however, you have 2 or 3 models for a game you'll never play kicking about, an army you'll never collect, or a small board game just sitting in your closet, the self-imposed cognitive barriers we place before ourselves are easier to overcome. When I sat down to paint these 2, I had already worked out a recipe with test models, but I didn't really have a plan of attack. The sponging and heavy texture for the hard surface purple was a spur-of-the-moment thing. I picked up my brush and thought, that's boring. Let's risk going wild. So I stuffed some packing foam into a paint cap and went at it. I'd used the technique once before to some effect, but I hadn't worked it out as far as I did with the Warjack. Luckily, I stuck with it, and lo, the result is pretty snazzy. While the purple as a whole is decent enough, I think the recipe needs work. The orange, on the other hand, is wonderfully nostalgic, reminding me of 2nd edition Warhammer 40k paint schemes. I'll certainly be returning to it at some point in the future. Before we say goodbye, a note on these Bretonnian archers. These are the first models for a new project I've started. Whenever I need to try out a full color test for a video, I paint up a quartet of archers plus a single knight of the realm. After 5 projects, I'll have both a full unit of 20 archers and a lance of 5 knights. In this way, I can gradually build up an entire old-school Bretonnian army, making my way through the large number of plastic archers and knights I have in the closet. There's much more to the project than just painting an army, however, and I'll be expanding upon it in a proper, dedicated video once the initial units are completed. If you've enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. If you have any suggestions, questions, or feedback on anything you've seen in this episode, please comment below. That's it for today. See you next time.